No videoing here.
Shut the video
Why
down.
not?
Because I said so.
And what's the press, man?
Shut it down.
Shut it down, sir.
Now.
The pickup truck of the American dream, or the pickup truck of the NRA, has a flat tire. We have the one. Now speak nice and clear in English, so I can hear you. But I'd be glad to try to answer anything I can.
All right, Mr. Nugent, given the knowledge of secondary devices in Building 7, would you support a new investigation?
Of which?
Building 7 that collapsed around 5:30 on 9/11. Given the knowledge of secondary devices, would you support a new investigation?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Nugent, I have here 7 new...
We had some officers out at the NRA Convention working on what we call off-duty security. It's kind of a moonlighting job to make extra money for the officers. And they're contracted by various agencies that hire them, whether it's the Kentucky Exposition Center, the National Rifle Association, what have you. And after speaking with the people at the Kentucky Exposition Center and talking with we had 2 officers that were present at that convention and may have even been around when some of those things happened to you guys, but it was not our officers directly involved.
Pelted by debris when the North Tower collapsed. 7 burned until late afternoon, allowing occupants to evacuate to safety.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Yeah, he said we're going to pull. He said we're going to pull the building. Silverstein said we're going to pull the building.
And we got the firemen saying they pulled it. I mean, Silverstein goes on PBS and says it, and we're the weirdos when he says it on TV. Unbelievable. Let's see that one more time.
Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
It takes demolition experts weeks to prepare for the destruction of a building. How do they do it on 9/11 in just a few hours? Seconds after 7 collapsed, this is what Dan Rather had to say about it.
Large building, in most other cities, would be one of the largest buildings in town, probably. Trade Center Building 7 has collapsed. Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself. Describe that. Now we go to videotape, the collapse of this building.
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the 3rd time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
Just in case you missed it, here it is again.
Deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down. Deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
This is a photo taken 1 second into Building 7's collapse. Notice the crimp. If we look at other controlled demolitions, we see that they first blow one of the central columns so the building falls in on itself. If you don't do this, the building falls outward and has a wider collapse radius and can damage surrounding structures. This was not the case with Building 7. Building 7 had a classic crimp or wedge. Its central column was blown out first, so it didn't structurally damage buildings just a few feet away from it. What was in Building 7? Well, the Department of Defense, the Central Intelligence Agency, FEMA, U.S. Secret Service, Securities and Exchange Commission, and the city's main command bunker, overseeing the entire operation. That's what was in Building 7, a structure that was over-engineered, that could stand thousands and thousands and thousands of degrees of temperature for days if need be. But it collapsed in just a few seconds. The command center for Rudolph Giuliani was in this building. Rudolph Giuliani had his command bunker in this structure, and so did the CIA. It wasn't just the city of New York. The CIA, the FBI were all based in this building. And Rudolph Giuliani told ABC News that he got a call that morning about 8 hours before this collapse, before a fire even started, and was told, get out of Building 7. And he left to a FEMA command base that had already been set up the night before, which he's now admitted in congressional testimony, right down the street by the harbor. A lot of interesting timing. Of course, we have George Bush's youngest brother, Marvin Bush, running security on the complex. And, of course, his contract, by the way, ended on the morning of 9/11. So that's another interesting facet to all of this. None of it adds up. But guess who ran security on these buildings? Marvin Bush, brother of the president, son of the former president, or the former CIA director. Marvin Bush ran security for this whole complex. This whole complex. And guess when his 2-year contract ended? This is the Associated Press on September 11th. And where did the media pick up on this story? From Barbara Bush's own memoir, Reflections. She wrote about it in the book. Then you have the firefighters telling Associated Press reporters to get back, to get away from the building, that Building 7 was about to come down. And then it magically did come down. And then the University of New York and the U.S. Geological Survey, federal and state, both seismographs picked up explosions going off, the classical pattern of a controlled demolition. He said that they made the decision on the afternoon of 9/11 to go ahead and pull or demolish Building 7, and that they gave the order and watched the building go down. Building 7 is further away from the towers and was not hit by planes. It's further away from the towers than buildings right across the street like the Millennium Hilton and others. So if your building's owned by Larry Silverstein, it collapses because he's got a big fat insurance policy. But if your building's closer and owned by somebody else, it doesn't get damaged at all. Why is the story of Building 7 so important? Why have we spent so much time on it? Because the official story is that the 2 planes that hit Tower 1 and 2, the big 110-story buildings, caused them to collapse, even though a modern steel building had never collapsed from fire. But then we have Building 7 that was further away than any of the buildings in the complex that later in the afternoon got a few small fires in it and collapsed. Now they have almost rebuilt Building 7 on the exact same spot. And look, buildings right next to it, even though it collapsed on fire, didn't even get that much damage. And then we have this huge building that was right beside Tower 1 and 2 that was hit by giant chunks of the building that did catch on fire, but nothing collapsed. The difference between that building and the new Building 7 is that Larry Silverstein doesn't own that building. Larry Silverstein doesn't own the Millennium Hilton that was closer than Building 7. But every building he owned either caught on fire or mysteriously collapsed. There has been over 100 uncontrolled fires in skyscrapers in the last 50 years, and never has one collapsed or come close to collapsing from fire. Only earthquakes and demolitions have brought these modern structures down.
I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
They give me cat scratch fever.